Program of our today's press briefings, and with the news from the east of Ukraine, Colonel Andriy Lysenko, the spokesman for the analytical and
Our program of the press briefing on the update news from the eastern Ukraine from Colonel Andriy Lysenko, the National Security and Defense Council Information Center spokesman. Прошу.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. The situation on the territories of Donetsk and Luhansk region remains tense. The militants continue to shell and attack the positions of the anti-terrorist operation forces. At the same time, the conflicts between different terrorist groupings in the regions controlled by them become sharper. Over the last 24 hours, the most active shelling of the anti-terrorist operation positions were in Donetsk and the Baltsovo directions and next to Bakhmutivka highway. On Donetsk direction, over the last 24 hours, the militants have 5 times shelled from artillery mortars and grenade launchers. The Donetsk airport, also there were several attempts to attack our positions. All the attacks were successfully repelled with great losses for the enemy. From grenade launchers and mortars, they fired at the anti-terrorist operation forces next to Piski, Troitsky, Vesele and at the city of Avdiivka. On the Baltsovo direction, the militants have shelled from Grad batteries the positions of Ukrainian military next to Nikishina, Ridkodub, Donetsk, and Novotushkivsk. They fired from mortars at our points next to Debaltsevo and Chernukhine. Our artilleries are firing in response, liquidating the positions of the terrorists. The militants also shelled the positions of Ukrainian military next to Bakhmutivka highway. From Grad batteries, they shelled the National Guard's red point next to this village of Nizhny. Also, they fired from tanks, mortars, and grenade launchers at our points next to Sokilniki and Trokhizbenka. On Mariupol direction from tanks and artillery, they shelled our points and rock checkpoints next to Granitne, Orlovsk, and Mykolaievka. The enemy has changed tactics and is more seldom launching open attacks against the positions of Ukrainian military, because all such attacks are being successfully repelled with losses to the enemy. 2 Ukrainian military were killed and 13 wounded over the last 24 hours. Last day, at some fragments of the border, there were no combat clashes with terrorists on the border beyond the boundaries of the anti-terrorist operation zone, and there were no drones detected. At the same time, we see the amassing of Russian troops in regions that border on Ukraine. In particular, the Millerova airfield in Rostov region has now the aviation unit that was based in Perm. Radio location stations and fighters MiG-31 are now deployed next to the border of Ukraine. They are able to control the airspace over the entire Luhansk region. The fact of the concentration of Russian troops also is confirmed by NATO. In particular, NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said that, according to their information, at the moment there is a significant amassing of Russian troops both in the east of Ukraine and along the state border. We're talking about troops, equipment, artillery, very modern systems of anti-aircraft defense. This is a serious strengthening of the military power, Stoltenberg said. He called upon Russia to stop escalation of the conflict, to withdraw military, and to stop their support for terrorists and to respect Minsk agreements. Yesterday at 4:10 p.m. in Donetsk region, next to the settlement Rybinsk, during the checking of the locality, Ukrainian bodyguards have detected a cache of great number of ammunitions. They found the rounds, live rounds, 1,300 live rounds of 7.62 millimeter caliber and 1,400 of caliber 5.45 millimeters, grenades, and they have established that this cache was used by illegal armed formation during attacks and also to provide for the subversive and sabotage groups. The President of Ukraine, Poroshenko, had a meeting with the Council of Volunteers at the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, leaders of volunteer organizations that engage in provision of the Ukrainian military. The volunteers will be involved in material, food, and medical supplies within the system of the Ministry of Defense. 2 representatives from volunteer organizations will work in every department of the Ministry of Ukraine, Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, that are responsible for the supplies to the armed forces. The head of state thanked volunteers for their active civic stand and efficient cooperation with the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. He also spoke in favor of creating councils of volunteers in other departments, such as the Ministry of Interior, Borders Service, and the Security Service. Yesterday, the LNR militants have shelled from Grad batteries the village of Toshkivka, Popasna district. Several projectiles hit a multi-storied house on the Donetsk street. 3 people died and 4 are badly wounded. 2 kids, 5 years old and 6 months old, are among the wounded. Several weeks ago, the terrorists have ruined from Graz one of the buildings of the school in Toshkivka. Then by some miracle, no one was killed. We should add that Ukrainian units are not located in this village, and this is evident that terrorists are on purpose firing at peaceful residents. In Stanichno-Luhansk district, next to the village of Lobacheva, a KAMAZ lorry exploded on the landmine, and a 55-year-old driver died. We again call upon local residents to be extremely careful because the terrorists are mining autoroutes and routes of movement of peaceful people. Yesterday at 1:20 p.m., the international and trunk telephony was restored for customers in Svatovo, Belokurokine, and some other settlements of these districts. 447.5 thousand residents of Donetsk and Luhansk regions were resettled from Donetsk to other regions of Ukraine, including 123,000 kids. The regional headquarters, together with local bodies of power, are looking for premises to locate citizens, check them for being adequate for people's lives. Besides, as we said before, in Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kharkiv regions, they continue to build stationary transit towns from modular type houses. At the moment in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk region, 20 lorries from Germany and 25 lorries in Kharkiv region were unloaded. They started to assemble first houses. On the border of the on the boundary of the districts of anti-terrorist Operation Dawn. There are 4 transit points in order for the meeting of IDPs. Krasnoarmeysk and Mariupol in Donetsk region, and Svatov and Lysychansk in Luhansk region. In general, almost 28,000 IDPs applied to these points, and as of today, in the city of Konstantinivka, Donetsk region, 346 children from the ATO zone are registered. 127 of them are provided with free food. 88 are individually learning, and 10 are learning extramurally. In Kramatorsk of Donetsk region, the Department for Labor and Social Protection of Population registered 5,338 people who are being displaced from the anti-terrorist operation zone. Over the last 24 hours, pyrotechnicians of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine have defused 36 units of explosive devices, including 8 artillery shells and 6 mortar mines. In general, over 1.5 thousand hectares of territory was searched, and 28,000 units of ammunition was detected and defused. The project of monitoring of human rights violation in Crimea started to work. There's an interactive map that will designate all the cases of human rights violations, starting from 24th of February and until now. 103 violations of political and civic rights were detected. 70 violations of the rights of indigenous people and ethnic minorities, 65 violations of cultural and religious rights, and 139 violations of social economic rights. We can say that if in spring the prosecution was aimed mostly against pro-Ukrainian activists, over the last time they increased the pressure on Crimean Tatars. 21 representatives of Crimean Tatars people were kidnapped since the occupation started. And the interactive map of the violation of human rights in Crimea is on the site www.terraze.org.ua. Petro Poroshenko had a meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Ukrainian president said that Russia does not fulfill Minsk agreements, and he called to use all the opportunities to stimulate Russia to fulfill those agreements. Frank-Walter Steinmeier emphasized that Minsk agreements have to remain the basis for the continuation of dialogue with the peaceful settlement of situation in Donbass. He reminded that at the start of the next year, there's a donor conference planned on the restoration of Donbass. In the context of international efforts in order to peacefully settle the conflict, the interlocutors agreed about the feasibility of multilateral formats, and besides, apart from Geneva and Normandy formats, they also suggested the idea of the so-called Weimar format with the participation of Germany, Poland, and France. Also, during his meeting with the Prime Minister of Norway, Erna Solberg, Mr. Poroshenko drew attention to numerous manifestations of terrorism in Ukraine. The Prime Minister of Norway emphasized that the Russian side has to stick to Minsk agreements, not only in words but in deeds. They also spoke about the more active involvement of international help and the reinforcement of the unity of countries in order to peacefully settle the situation. The Prime Minister of Norway said that she welcomes the insistence of Ukrainian side on being on detention apart from in spite of the violent logics of the conflict development. Also, Norway will provide Ukraine with almost 3 million euro in order to support IDPs from the east of Ukraine, while previously they have already gave Ukraine 1 million euro. The Minister for Foreign Affairs of the UK, Philip Hammond, said that Britain will continue to pressurize Russia until it fulfills its obligations. American Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham called upon the President of the U.S., Barack Obama, to provide Ukraine with lethal weapon to fight the terrorists, having emphasized that U.S. and the EU are obliged to provide Ukraine with arms and equipment linked to military reconnaissance that is needed. But Ukraine, the senator said that if the US and the EU do not understand the entire seriousness of the situation, then Russian aggression will spread to Moldova and Baltic states.
Now your questions. Do you have any questions?
This shell, 35 others like it, were fired from Petropavlika to Debaltseve. How can we stop this from happening?
Could you repeat it again, please? Could you repeat it again?
Кінцівку, будь ласка, повторіть.
Can you repeat your question, please?
6 days ago, this shell and 35 others like it were fired from Petropavlika to Debaltseve at Ukrainian forces by the Russians. How can we stop the flow of arms into Ukraine?
Thank you. Щоб припинити потік
To stop the flow of weapons which is used to kill our citizens, first of all, we need to start, they have to start implementing, fulfilling the Minsk agreements. But the question is, how can they fulfill them? The terrorists are not observing these agreements. The terrorists are the consumers of what Russian Federation provides. They do what, according to the orders they receive from Russia. And we hope that our efforts and the efforts of the international community will influence the Russian Federation, the leaders of Russian Federation who are doing all that, and they will force them to stop this flow of these arms which is used to kill our people. I would like to stress that they are killing Russian soldiers as well and officers who come here. And I'm sure that the parents of those who receive from the territory of Ukraine the bodies of Russian soldiers who were killed and mercenaries, they are absolutely against the policy implemented by Russian leadership. And so we do expect that both the international community and the internal tension which is inside Russia will influence the decisions made by Russian leadership. Nevertheless, we shouldn't be relaxed. Every day we get many shellings, many attacks, and our military are killed every day, but they heroically fulfill their job, and they do not allow the attacks of terrorists to expand, and do not allow terrorists to move further. There's a lot of work going on at the front line in the information sphere and along diplomatic channels. So now we cannot give you exact answer when will this stop, but we are doing everything for that to stop. Any other questions? Two questions. First of all, maybe you already have information on printing false grivnas on the occupied territories, because the National Bank today has made the statement. And the second question is about liquidation, elimination of the leaders of the groups of terrorists, and that is done by the special services of Russian Federation. Can you confirm that there's information that they eliminated by the special forces of Russian Federation? As to false money, really? There was information, and it's being verified, and the regulator, our National Bank of Ukraine, also stated that people should be very careful to the banknotes which are in the east of Ukraine. Maybe they will appear in other regions of Ukraine. So we would like to ask people, when anyone finds a false note, please inform our law enforcement bodies, who will immediately react and who will eliminate the channels of supply of false money. I can say that it's not just about Ukrainian grivnas, it's about foreign currency which Ukraine lacks. So it's not just, pay attention not just to Ukrainian grivnas. From history we know to destroy the economy of the country with which another country is fighting, bringing false money is one of the elements of destroying the economy of the country. So we call upon our citizens, be attentive, not just on the roads where there might be mines, but in your life, where you are purchasing something. So please inform your relatives. Tell everyone to be very careful. And talking about elimination of the leaders, 2 weeks ago we informed that in Donetsk Oblast, the special unit of the main intelligence department of Russian Federation arrived, and this unit is called Wimpel, and they're eliminating the leaders who do not execute the orders received from the Kremlin. And on this background, when they are fighting for resources and for power, and there is a conflict between these bands, and they are even shooting at each other. There are conflicts with lethal consequences. This is nothing new. That is the reality. Any other questions? Then we would like to thank Mr. Lysenko. Be careful and